Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Sabrina Paganoni. I'm the co director of the Neurological Clinical Research Institute at Mass General Brigham. And today we're coming to you from the World Medical Innovation Forum in Boston, a gathering of global leaders, researchers, and disruptors who are redefining what's possible in medicine. We just completed the panel at the forum that I moderated called Innovations in Disability Technology Shaping a More Accessible Future. This was a fantastic panel featuring a distinguished group of experts who are at the forefront of transforming lives through their innovative technologies. To discuss some of our impressions and takeaways, I'm joined here by Dr. Cheri Blauwet. Cheri, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. And thank you for that kind welcome. My name, as noted, is Dr. Cheri Blauwet. I am currently the Senior Vice President and Chief Clinical Officer at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. I spent many wonderful years here at Mass General Brigham as well. And I am also a retired Paralympic athlete and competed at a very high level in the sport of wheelchair racing. And although you can't see it on the podcast, I am also myself a wheelchair user with lived experience.
Great. So I want to start with a concept that was at the core of our panel discussion. Innovation in disability technology benefits everyone across the lifespan. Sherry, can you tell us more about why this is important and what work you do in this area?
Sure. So, one of the, I think, key takeaways from this panel is, as you noted, that really when we talk about the disability community, we're not talking about a small subset of society or this niche group of people. We're really, frankly, talking about everyone. So, disability affects everyone at some point in their life, whether in a permanent way or a temporary way. And particularly with our aging population and increased survivorship from many chronic conditions like cancer, for example, heart disease, etc. The national and global prevalence of disability is increasing. So, frankly, this is a really hot area of tech and innovation because it's a really great time to start to get into this market to think about how can we design new tools and technologies for the disability community and understand that honestly it's a great business opportunity as well. Um, we had this panel today. I think it was the first time that this topic was really a focus of the agenda here at the World Medical Innovation Forum. And I think hopefully it's just the start of a long conversation, and we can continue to expand upon these things in future years as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we spent a lot of time discussing the landscape of disability innovation, and one thing that I found particularly intriguing is that we are really at the cusp of something new. There are so many groundbreaking and innovative solutions on the horizon, and I see it in my own work working
Mhm.
with people with ALS. We are seeing dramatic breakthroughs in terms of communication technology, exoskeletons, or assistive devices. But now, in the panel, we explored, a number of different tools that are becoming available. So tell us more about what do you find most exciting in the innovation landscape right now?
Mhm. Sure. Well, I'll point to a couple of things. So, firstly, I think that we all bring a different lens to that innovation landscape. One lens that I bring, I think, because of my background in sport and physical activity, is this concept of mobility and how we move to promote health. So, of course, physical activity is a core component of chronic disease prevention, healthy aging, etc. We all need to move more, but certainly in the past and even increasingly into the future, we have to, as a society, figure out how we meet that goal, but with people who have different types of bodies and different types of capabilities and functions. And really, what we're seeing is that rather than in the sports sector, rather than designing a piece of equipment that's just for an athlete with a disability, we see equipment being designed more so for anyone that wants to use it, right? And again, we're sort of taking that concept out of a silo and understanding that, mobility is of universal importance, physical activity is of universal importance, and we have to ensure that it is accessible to everyone and think about how we innovate. The other area that I think even you, Dr. Paganoni, could talk about it, particularly in your work with ALS, is this whole area of the brain computer interface and how that's opening up new levels of function for individuals with more significant mobility impairment.
Yes, in terms of brain computer interfaces, I think that's a field that's exploding right now. And I do want to put in a plug for Dr. Lee Hogberg, who will speak at the forum as well and in a separate session. A lot of researchers at Mass General Brigham, in collaboration with other researchers in the Boston ecosystem and with industry as well. Many people are trying to develop now ways for people who have lost their voice to be able to communicate again. When I talk to people living with ALS, sometimes we talk about nearly different functions that are most important to them, and I would say that the ability to communicate is perhaps one of the ones that are most important
Mhm.
for most people, and that's because I think that goes to the core of who we are as
Mhm.
humans who want to communicate.
Mhm.
And so for people living with ALS or who have other diseases and they become, weak and they lose their voice, it's so important to have tools that allow them to communicate. And there are different tools. One of them is, the ability to save their voice, bank their voice, and then have technology computers speak with their own voice. That's wonderful. And now the emerging technologies that we are seeing are those such as brain computer interfaces that allow people to just think about what they want to say and then control computers that way by using these implanted devices that can, essentially understand what their thoughts are and what they intend to say and then speak with their own voice. So it's actually incredible. And it's
Mhm.
something that I think we're really going to see more and more the next
Mhm.
few years. During the panel, there was, some interesting discussion about sort of access. How do we make these new technologies that are, so complex in a way or, so
Mhm.
expensive at times? How do we make them accessible? And how do we get people with disabilities involved in the design process, so-called co-design, so that all these new tools that
Mhm.
hopefully will become available soon can actually meet the needs
Mhm.
of the users, of the people who are, these tools are intended for.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us more about that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that was a really important theme. The reality is that historically we would see these types of technologies and tools be developed, but once they were developed, they were out of reach for most people. And I think that there are a few avenues where we can think about sort of disrupting that model. One of them is honestly, as you noted, getting more people with disabilities involved, not only in the co development of products, but also, frankly, as leaders and decision makers and involved in policy, right? And as we think about how we develop our policies here in the US and globally, understanding that a precision or customized piece of equipment for a person with a disability, like a custom wheelchair or prosthetic device, it's not a sexy, nice thing to have. It's actually a core part of what someone needs to function in society and to live with health and to avoid secondary conditions. And so I think that's one angle, right? Is really disrupting the policy space of how we think about reimbursement, insurance, and getting people what they need. The other thing we touched upon the panel that was really interesting was just this concept of scalability and understanding that if you develop a tool or technology with universal design in mind, then yes, it might be helpful for people with disabilities, but it's actually helpful for everyone in society. And the market expands to be much larger. And if we're successful in developing technologies in that way, then of course that scalability brings more access. And so I think certain things are classic examples of that. So, for example, closed captioning, which was developed for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but now that was scaled, right? And now you can't go to an airport or a sports bar anywhere in the US and not see closed captioning. So, that's one example of something that was developed for the disability community, but has really um, disrupted how we function in society more globally.
That's a great example. And there were a few more examples
Hmm.
during the panel. So I think that's a key concept
Hmm.
because ultimately it's a two-way process.
Right.
Like, this kind of work in the consumer's goods space can help develop
Yeah.
tools for people with disabilities, and the opposite is true as well,
Exactly.
where technologies that are developed for specific needs then can be scaled up. And we're probably going to see more and more of that. Now, one aspect of the forum is that it brings together leaders from different perspectives, academia, healthcare, industry, policymakers. And we had that example on the panel. We had physicians, we had researchers, we had advocates and policymakers. What role does cross-sector collaboration play in accelerating innovation?
Well, I think it's critical, and ultimately, I think that if we're working in silos, we simply won't reach as many people as would otherwise be possible. So, I think the point we touched upon earlier regarding um, bringing something to market and then scaling it to the extent that it's actually accessible to people is a great one. Um, you know, ultimately, if we're working with end users and people with disabilities to design a tool or a technology that will be useful to the community, we should be thinking from the start about that cross-sector collaboration and how it's going to be designed in a way that where we're not having to circle back to think about, well, who's going to pay for it, or how are we going to pay for it, or how are we going to find a billing code for it, or how are we going to get policy support for it. And so I think that that cross-sector collaboration from the start is critically important, so that once we do develop a tool that we know can be transformative to the community, that we're not then scrambling in order to make it accessible.
Yeah. So if we were to fast forward 5 years from now, so what do you hope will be different in disability innovation? What's the next big thing? And how are the efforts that we discussed today gonna help?
Mhm. Well, I think the biggest thing, my hope, is that in 5 years from now and 10 years from now and beyond, that we're not siloing this conversation. So again, that more people become interested in really jumping on board of this really rapidly accelerating area of innovation, and understanding that there is a big market there, and that we all need to be part of this transformation. On the panel, we talked a little bit about the ADA generation. So, the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, and we now have a whole generation of young leaders and advocates who are becoming of professional age, in their 20s and 30s. They grew up in a society where they had basic protection of their civil rights, and they themselves became doctors or engineers or lawyers, or innovators or founders. And so I think that that in of itself will bring a sea change, because there certainly is alive and well this concept of nothing about us without us. And if you have those people involved from the start, you'll start to see minds being transformed. And ultimately, as we noted at the top of our discussion, because disability is such a universal experience, we should be more forward thinking about unsiloing this conversation, um, and ensuring that everyone is part of it.
Yeah. I had to say this was the most inspiring panel, and I'm so glad that you brought us together with many colleagues, and I really hope that you said this is the first time that this particular topic is at the forum. I hope that really this will be the beginning of a new and larger conversation. Any parting thoughts?
Well, no, I agree with you. I think that this is just the start. And I agree. The conversation was intriguing, and just really appreciate everyone for listening in today, and hopefully, again, being a part of this movement.
Thank you. Thank you for continuing the discussion after our panel. The World Medical Innovation Forum is a reminder that the future of medicine is not just being imagined, it's being built. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.